Have you ever wondered why life suddenly gets harder? Just when you start dreaming bigger? What if I told you that the chaos you're running from is actually the proof that God is about to hand you something massive, but only if you survive the pressure? God never gives greatness to weak men. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. Everyone wants to be a king, but nobody wants to bleed for the crown. You think you're ready for success, for power, for respect, but are you really? Because when God decides to elevate someone, He doesn't start with gifts. He starts with pressure. He starts with pain. You get stripped of everything that made you soft. You lose fake friends. You lose comfort. You lose sleep. You lose that safe little version of yourself that was never built to carry greatness. And in that suffering, you either break or become who you were meant to be. Weak men collapse under that pressure. They make excuses. They blame others. They complain that life is unfair. And you know what? Life is unfair. But greatness doesn't care about your complaints. God doesn't hand power to the emotional. He hands it to the disciplined, the focused, the relentless. If you can't take the fire, you'll never hold the torch. And if your character is soft, no amount of talent will save you. You'll sabotage every blessing you get. So before God blesses you, He breaks you. And if you can't handle the break, you'll never be trusted with the blessing. The struggle is the signal, not the setback. When everything starts going wrong, your money dries up, relationships fall apart, your path gets unclear. That's not life punishing you. That's God checking your heart. That's the moment most people quit. But that's also the moment champions rise. Look at every great man in history. Before their rise came their ruin. Before the breakthrough came the breakdown. You feel like life is crushing you? Good. That means something's coming. That means you're on the edge of something bigger than you've ever imagined. Weak minds interpret resistance as failure, but strong minds, warrior minds, they recognize it as the threshold, the gate. That wall you're hitting, it's not the end, it's the door. But the price to open it isn't a key, it's your will, your grit, your ability to keep swinging when you've got nothing left but breath. If you turn back now, you never really wanted it. If you surrender when it gets tough, God knows you weren't ready. But if you keep going, if you push through the fire without flinching, without crying, without begging, that's when the blessing arrives. Not a second earlier, not a second later. When the world thinks you're done, but you're still moving, that's when the shift happens. That's when the universe opens up. That's when God says, now you're ready. What if I told you the reason your life feels like it's falling apart is because something powerful is being built behind the scenes? What if the pain you're feeling isn't punishment, but preparation? You're not losing, you're being tested. And if you don't understand that, you'll miss everything that was meant for you. You don't get rewarded, you get tested first. That's how it works. People want the reward without passing the exam. They want money, success, respect, but they don't want to be questioned, stretched, broken, and put under fire. But here's the truth. Before you get anything meaningful in this life, you will be tested. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Not once, not twice, but again and again, until you're carved into the kind of person who can handle the weight of the reward you're chasing. You want power? Then expect pressure. You want freedom? Then expect discipline. You want legacy? Then expect sacrifice. See, God doesn't just hand things over to anyone who asks. He watches. He observes. He sends storms to see if you'll run or stand tall. He'll make the ground shake beneath your feet, not to destroy, but to see what you're made of when everything familiar disappears. And when that test comes, most people crumble. They fold. They retreat. And they wonder why nothing ever changes. But the few who endure it, the ones who take the hits and still keep moving, they're the ones who rise, not because they were lucky, but because they proved they were ready. Pain is proof you're being prepared. If you feel like life is attacking you from all angles, understand this. Pressure only gets applied to people who are on the edge of something big. You're being shaped by fire. That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's construction. Diamonds don't come from comfort. They come from chaos, from heat, from pressure so intense that only something unbreakable can survive it. And that's exactly what your pain is doing. It's sculpting you into someone unbreakable. You're not being punished. You're being promoted. Every challenge, every betrayal, every setback, every sleepless night, it's all part of the transformation. You think that pain is unnecessary. No, that pain is the chisel in the hand of God. He's carving away your ego, your fears, your laziness, your excuses. He's making room for power, wisdom, focus, and strength. The problem is, most people run from pain. They numb it, avoid it, hide from it. But that only delays the growth. If you want to become something more than average, you have to face the fire. Let it burn away the parts of you that were never meant to survive at the next level. That pain you're feeling right now is sacred. It's the signal that something inside you is evolving. And once you've endured enough of it, once you've walked through the flames without breaking, that's when the reward appears. That's when the world sees the version of you that was buried under all the comfort and weakness. Ever notice how the people who win big never talk about how easy it was? That's because the real reward isn't found in success, it's hidden in the suffering. And the deeper that suffering, the more valuable the reward becomes. But there's one thing most people miss. The pain is quiet, and so is the preparation. Blessings are earned in silence, not comfort. Most people want applause before they've even earned a whisper. They post every little effort, every fake grind, hoping the world validates their journey. But that's not how blessings arrive. The most powerful things in life show up in silence, after you've bled, cried, and broken behind closed doors, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when you're alone with your pain, your purpose, and your discipline. That's where the real work is done. See, the comfort zone is a trap, disguised as peace. It keeps you average. It keeps you soft. And people stay there because it's easy. But greatness never grows in comfort. It grows in pressure, in silence, in those brutal moments when you could quit, but don't. When you want to scream, but choose to keep grinding. That's where blessings are earned. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. You don't get rewarded for showing up once. You get rewarded for showing up every single day when your body says no, and your mind screams quit. The real you is forged in that dark place, where nobody sees the grind, where nobody hands out medals. That's where God watches, silently, to see if you're serious. The storm comes before the throne. People love the throne, the success, the status, the lifestyle, but they forget the storm. And the storm is the gatekeeper. It's the cost of entry. It doesn't matter what you want. If you're not willing to get through the storm, you'll never see the crown. God doesn't just give power away. He hides it behind hell, behind chaos, behind collapse. And he waits to see who can walk through it without losing their mind. The storm isn't random. It's divine. It's designed to hit you exactly where you're weak, to shake the parts of you that can't come with you to the next level. You think the breakdown is an attack, but it's actually a filter. It separates those who fantasize about the throne from those who fight for it. Most people want royalty without resilience. They want to be chosen without going through the challenge. But the storm doesn't care about what you want. It only respects who you become in the process. When life starts falling apart, when you're broke, betrayed, tired, and questioning everything, that's when you're closest to the throne. But here's the catch. You don't get to see it until you've earned it, until you've endured the storm, until you've stared chaos in the face and said, "Try me," because the storm doesn't block the throne. It reveals who actually deserves to sit on it. Why is it that when you're closest to your breakthrough, everything and everyone suddenly disappears? The noise stops. The support vanishes. You're left alone. It's not abandonment. It's alignment. Because what's about to happen in your life wasn't meant to happen with a crowd. Isolation is where warriors are born, not in the spotlight, not in the comfort of applause, not when everyone's cheering you on. The real transformation happens in silence, when the room is empty, when your phone stops ringing, When you look around and realize it's just you, your mission, and your pain. That's the arena. That's where the weak break and the strong are built. Because in isolation, there's no one to impress, no one to lean on, no one to save you. It's just raw truth. You either face yourself or you fold. Most people fear isolation. They think it means something's wrong, but in reality, it means everything's finally right. God removes the noise before he gives the blessing. He clears the stage before the main act. You were never meant to build your destiny with distractions in your ear and fake friends in your corner. So when the silence comes, when the world goes quiet, and you're forced to sit alone with your thoughts and your drive, that's not punishment. That's precision. You're being sharpened, molded, hardened, because the next level of your life requires a version of you that's unshakable. And that version can only be born in isolation. Stop begging. Start building yourself. Too many people are out here crying for help, praying for someone to save them, hoping the universe sends a sign. But what they don't realize is, you are the sign. You are the rescue plan. No one's coming. No one's handing out strength. No one's waking up at 4 a.m. to chase your dream for you. It's you or no one. You want God to bless you, to elevate you, to give you more. Then build the kind of man who can handle more. Begging for mercy doesn't make you strong. Training does. Discipline does. Waking up every day and doing the hard thing, especially when no one's watching, that's what turns you into someone God can trust with power. People waste time asking for motivation, for miracles, for shortcuts. But the truth is, the world belongs to the man who moves, regardless of how he feels, who builds himself when he's tired, who upgrades his mindset when it hurts, who stops asking and starts acting. You don't rise by hoping. You rise by deciding, by becoming the kind of person who doesn't need applause, permission, or constant support. The kind of person who walks into a dark room alone and still lights it up with sheer will. That's when things change. That's when the doors start opening. Not because you begged, but because you became undeniable. Because your actions screamed louder than your prayers ever did. What if everything you've been taught about success is wrong? What if the reason you're still stuck is because you've been searching for something instead of becoming someone? The truth is, real power isn't found. It's forged. And if you're not willing to fight for it, you were never meant to hold it. If it's easy, it's not divine. That's the brutal truth nobody wants to accept. In a world obsessed with shortcuts, hacks, and overnight success, people have forgotten one thing: anything truly powerful, anything truly life-changing, never comes easy. It's supposed to break you before it builds you. It's supposed to test your patience, your commitment, your endurance. The easy path might give you temporary comfort, but it will never give you permanent power. God doesn't bless you with something valuable without making sure you're strong enough to carry it. You want a kingdom? Prepare for war. You want purpose? Prepare for pain. The divine path isn't smooth. It's filled with chaos, resistance, and moments of doubt. That's how you know it's real. If everything is falling into place too quickly, too easily, ask yourself this: is it growth, or is it comfort disguised as progress? The hardest roads lead to the most sacred destinations, the ones you earn through blood and grit, the ones that demand you to evolve. If you want to live a divine life, stop chasing what's convenient and start choosing what's necessary. You don't find purpose, you fight for it. People are sitting around waiting for clarity, waiting for a sign, waiting for their calling to knock on their door. But that's not how it works. Purpose isn't found like a coin on the ground. It's uncovered in the battlefield of life, in the suffering, in the grind, in the heartbreaks, in the decisions you make when no one's watching. You build purpose by stepping into the chaos and choosing to rise instead of run. Purpose is born when you stop asking, "What should I do?" and start declaring, "This is who I'm becoming." It's not about being chosen. It's about choosing yourself again and again, even when it hurts, even when you fail, especially when you fail. The world tries to convince you that your mission is somewhere outside of you. But the truth is, It's already inside, buried under your excuses, hidden beneath your fears. And the only way to find it is to fight through all the lies you've believed about yourself. You were never meant to live small. You were never meant to exist just to pay bills and die. You were built for more. But that more requires pain. It requires sacrifice. It requires a level of aggression toward your own weakness. You don't discover purpose. You dominate it. You chase it like your life depends on it. Because it does. That version of you you're searching for, he's not waiting at the finish line. He's buried beneath every struggle you're afraid to face. Have you ever felt like life keeps hitting you harder the moment you decide to level up? It's not bad luck. It's a signal. Because when you start walking toward power, something in the universe rises to meet you, not with applause, but with resistance. And how you respond in that moment decides everything. Most people say they want to change, but the truth is, they don't want the discomfort that comes with it. They want growth, but not the grind. They want to transform, but they don't want the identity death that comes first. And that's where the real war begins. Because before anything in your life changes, you have to die. Not your body, but the version of you that's been holding you back. That lazy you, that weak you, that scared you, that soft, doubting, excuse-making you. That version has to burn, because nothing powerful grows from a coward's soil. God doesn't build warriors out of comfort. He builds them out of fire. And until you accept that the old version of you has to be destroyed, you'll never step into what you were actually meant to become. The reason you're stuck is not because you lack opportunities. It's because you're still carrying dead weight from your past. You're dragging the opinions of others, the failures you never let go of, the comfort you refuse to leave. And that version of you cannot walk through the door God has opened for you. It doesn't fit. So you have a choice. Stay familiar, or get dangerous. Stay soft, or get sharp. The next level isn't waiting for the upgraded environment. It's waiting for the upgraded you. No man reaches his destiny by accident. You don't stumble into purpose. You build it with intention. And that starts with your decisions, your standards, your habits. Every day you're casting a vote for the man you'll become. You either vote for your limits or your greatness. You either feed your fears or your future. And every small choice either sharpens you or weakens you. The battlefield isn't out there. It's inside you. That war between your potential and your past, between your excuses and your excellence, between who you are and who you were born to be. And most people lose that war, not because they weren't strong, but because they were never honest. They lied to themselves, told themselves they had more time, that they were doing enough, that they were waiting for the right moment. But there is no right moment. There is only right now. And what you choose in this moment determines whether you rise or stay stuck. You're not tired. You're undisciplined. You're not lost. You're ignoring your inner voice. You're not unlucky. You're just avoiding the work. Everything you want is already written in your story. But you have to fight to turn the page. You have to decide that who you were yesterday is no longer allowed to exist today. Only then does the real path open up. Only then does life begin to make sense. What if I told you the reason your breakthrough hasn't come yet is because you still haven't unlocked the mindset that matches the level you're praying for? It's not that you're unworthy, it's that you're unready. And the moment you truly decide to become unshakable, everything starts to shift. Faith without action is fantasy. Everyone says they believe. Everyone says they're waiting on God, waiting on timing, waiting on destiny. But what they don't realize is, belief alone is not enough. Faith is a seed, but without movement, it dies. You can pray all day, but if your actions don't match your prayers, you're just playing games with yourself. God doesn't move through talkers. He moves through doers, through people who aren't just hoping, but grinding, who aren't just asking, but acting. The reason some people seem to be blessed is not because they're special, it's because their work ethic proves their faith. If you say you want it, but your habits scream comfort, you don't actually want it. You want the feeling of wanting it. There's a difference. The man who walks in true faith doesn't just speak, it shows in how he wakes up, how he trains, how he studies, how he prepares. His discipline is louder than his voice. He doesn't need validation because his results speak for him. God doesn't respond to emotional begging. He responds to alignment. When your mindset, your actions, and your values line up, then doors start opening, not by chance, but by force. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect. People talk about self-love like it's comfort, pampering, and ease. No. Real self-love is holding yourself to a higher standard even when no one else does. It's choosing what's hard over what's easy. It's saying no to distractions, to laziness, to mediocrity, because you respect your purpose too much to play small. Weak men think discipline is a burden. Strong men understand it's a weapon. A man without discipline is a man without direction, and a man without direction is a danger to himself. The world will give you every excuse to be soft, to stay the same, to blame others. It rewards feelings over focus, comfort over character. But none of that will build you. None of that will prepare you for what's coming. Discipline isn't about being strict. It's about being ready. When the opportunity comes, will you be in shape? Will your mind be sharp? Will your spirit be strong? Or will you be standing there full of regret, knowing you had the chance, but lacked the consistency? Discipline is what keeps you grounded when motivation fades. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls. But discipline, it's a system. It's what you do regardless of how you feel. The world doesn't care about your mood. Your destiny doesn't care about your excuses. The only thing that matters is whether you're showing up or not. And the man who shows up every single day, even when it hurts, even when it's boring, even when nobody's watching, that man becomes unstoppable. That man becomes chosen. Have you ever asked yourself why some people rise while others stay stuck at the same level for years? It's not talent. It's not timing. It's because the ones who rise made a brutal decision to outgrow everything that made them comfortable. They stopped living by feeling and started living by fire. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Everyone has dreams. Everyone says they want to be great. But dreams mean nothing without structure, without habits, without a system that forces you to evolve whether you feel like it or not. You can have all the ambition in the world, but if your day is controlled by distractions, laziness, and impulse, you will never rise. A system is what separates the emotional from the elite. It's what holds you accountable when motivation disappears. It's what keeps you locked in when your mind tries to make excuses. Systems don't lie. You can tell yourself you're serious, but your system reveals the truth. What time do you wake up? What do you feed your mind? How do you respond when life punches you in the face? That's where the real answers live. You don't get to cheat this. You don't get to hope your way to success. If you're not living by a system, you're living by emotion. And emotion is the enemy of progress. It's unstable. It changes daily. But a system, that's the foundation that turns chaos into clarity. Power doesn't come from knowing. It comes from becoming. People get stuck in information loops. They read, they watch, they learn, but they never act. And even when they do, it's inconsistent. Because deep down, they still believe knowledge alone is power. It's not. The man who wins isn't the one who knows the way. It's the one who walks it, daily, relentlessly, without needing applause, without needing permission. Becoming is about shedding everything that doesn't serve your mission. It's not just about addition. It's about subtraction, removing weakness, killing bad habits, burning the bridges to your old self so you never go back. You can't become powerful by dragging your old mindset with you. You can't walk into your future carrying the weight of who you used to be. Becoming is violent. It's uncomfortable. It requires sacrifice. You'll lose friends. You'll lose comfort. You'll lose the version of you that made everyone else feel safe. But in exchange, you gain something greater. Alignment with your purpose, dominance over your time, and unshakable control over your mind. When you truly start to become who you were meant to be, life doesn't get easier, it gets clearer. The distractions fall away, the noise fades, and all that's left is the path, the pressure, and your will to push through. That's the zone where growth lives. That's where the average fall off. And that's where the elite are born, not by chance, not by luck, but by design, by discipline, by becoming the kind of person who doesn't just wish for greatness, but becomes impossible to ignore. Have you ever wondered why things feel the hardest just before something is supposed to change? Why the pressure increases, the noise gets louder, and nothing seems to move, even though deep down you feel something big is about to happen? That's not random. That's not life being unfair. That's the sign. That's the pattern. When God is about to give you something, He doesn't send a soft breeze. He sends a storm to see if you're ready, because blessings come with weight, and not everyone has the strength to carry what they're asking for. So before every breakthrough, life will test your patience, your focus, and your commitment, not as punishment, but as proof. Proof that you are not just wishing, you're worthy. This is the part most people run from. The delay, the silence, the resistance. They say they're ready, but the moment things get uncomfortable, they start questioning everything. They don't realize the delay isn't the denial, it's the demand for development. When you ask for something big, the universe asks you a question back. Can you handle what you're asking for? That's when the test begins. Not in the comfort zone, but in the chaos. It's not when things are easy that your faith is measured. It's when nothing's working, when the doors stay closed, when everyone's moving forward except you, and you still keep going. Think about it. When you plant a seed, nothing shows above ground for days, maybe weeks. But does that mean it's not growing? No. It means the roots are going deeper, stronger. Because what's coming has weight. And if the roots are shallow, the tree will collapse under its own blessing. Your journey works the same way. Before God hands you something great, He prepares your foundation. That's why the process is heavy. That's why the test feels personal, because it is. It's designed specifically for the thing you ask for. You can't pray for greatness and expect to remain average. You can't ask for more without being stretched. So when life feels like it's pulling you back, when everything seems to be going wrong, understand it's not the end. It's the tension before the release. It's the silence before the sound. It's the battlefield before the blessing. And here's where most people break. They don't recognize the test for what it is. They confuse pressure with punishment. They confuse struggle with rejection. But those who truly win, those who receive what they were meant to carry, they understand the pattern. They don't panic when the storm hits. They lean into it. They don't question their path. They double down on it. Because they know the test isn't random. It's required. When God is about to elevate you, He first isolates you. He removes distractions. He removes fake support. He strips away what you thought you needed, so you can finally focus on what actually matters. And that pruning process, it hurts. But it also clarifies. It shows you who you are. Not just who you say you are, but who you really are when things are on the line. This is where patience gets refined, where emotional control becomes a weapon. Because if you can stay calm when nothing's moving, if you can keep showing up when no one's clapping, if you can stay focused when all you want to do is quit, that's when you unlock the next level. Not because you forced it, but because you proved you were ready for it. You earned it in silence, in struggle, in solitude. And by the time the blessing arrives, you're not surprised, you're prepared. Because you didn't just wait, you became something while waiting. There's a difference between waiting with frustration and waiting with faith. Frustration says, "Why is it taking so long?" Faith says, "I'm being made stronger while I wait." Frustration looks at time like an enemy. Faith looks at time like a tool. When you understand that every second of delay is part of the design, you stop fighting the clock and start trusting the process. That shift changes everything. Because the battle you're in right now, it's not to destroy you, it's to reveal you. And you won't recognize yourself when it's over. You'll look back and realize the storm wasn't there to drown you. It was there to wake you up. to strip away your excuses, to force you to fight for what you said you wanted. Everyone wants to receive, but few are willing to remain when it gets tough. They bail too early. They forfeit the blessing because they didn't expect resistance. But anything valuable comes with pressure. Diamonds aren't made in comfort. Warriors aren't forged in silence. The fire you're feeling right now is part of your becoming. It's how the weak parts burn off. It's how the real version of you rises up. You're not being delayed, you're being defined. So the next time you feel stuck, the next time life feels unfair, the next time your dream seems too far, remember, that's the moment the test is working. That's the place where your next level is being shaped. The weight you're carrying now is proof of the strength you're building. The pressure is not the enemy. It's the proof you're on the edge of something powerful. You're not stuck. You're being sharpened. You're not forgotten. You're being focused. Because when God is about to give you something, He doesn't just hand it to you. He builds you into the kind of person who can handle it, protect it, and multiply it. Have you ever felt like you were doing everything right? Praying, working, waiting, and yet nothing was happening? Like you were stuck in a space between what you believed in and what you could see? That silence, that delay, that long, uncomfortable stretch of time where nothing moves, that's the moment most people misinterpret. They think God is ignoring them. They think life has forgotten them. But what if I told you that the silence isn't rejection, it's preparation in disguise? What if the delay isn't there to hurt you, but to build you? Delay is not denial. It's a divine strategy, a test wrapped in stillness, a furnace disguised as waiting. And if you don't understand that, you'll walk away from the very thing that was coming for you. Most people break during the wait. Not because the wait is unbearable, but because they never knew how important it was. They mistook divine timing for divine absence. They thought just because the phone didn't ring, the answer wasn't coming. But the process of becoming is always hidden. Like a seed underground. It's quiet, it's slow, it's invisible, but it's real. The waiting room is never empty. It's filled with unseen lessons, unspoken growth, and unshakable molding. Because when God is about to give you something powerful, He doesn't rush it. He slows it down. Not to tease you, but to prepare you. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. Silence is not a void. It's a signal. It means construction is happening behind the scenes. But most people don't stay long enough to see the frame take shape. They walk away halfway through the build. They trade purpose for comfort. They settle because they were looking for noise, for motion, for signs, and didn't know that the greatest transformations happen in complete silence. Mountains grow slowly. Icebergs form in cold darkness. And so does strength. So does character. So does destiny. The delay is not to discourage you. It's to strengthen the parts of you that can't be rushed. You've got to be careful not to confuse a quiet season with a dead season. There's a difference between being buried and being planted. Buried feels dark. Buried feels forgotten. Buried feels final. But planted is a setup. Planted means there's growth taking place where no one can see it yet. The roots are growing deep, so the future doesn't collapse under pressure. If God gave you what you wanted too early, it would destroy you, not bless you. You'd mismanage it. You'd idolize it. You'd fall in love with the result instead of the process. That's why He hides it. That's why He delays it. Not to hurt you, but to mature you. The delay will demand your patience, your trust, your surrender. And not once, over and over. Because trust isn't tested when things go right. Trust is tested when you can't hear anything but your own doubts. When you keep showing up to the gym, to your goals, to your dreams, and nothing's clapping for you. No signs, no feedback, just faith. That's the refining fire. That's when the weak parts break, and the real version of you is exposed. The waiting is where you're carved, where your ego gets shattered, where your discipline is born, and where your clarity gets sharpened like a blade. You walk into the waiting room uncertain, but you walk out with vision. So many people sabotage their own future by quitting too soon. They get frustrated with the delay. They start comparing their journey to someone else's timeline. They look at who's getting married, who's making money, who's going viral, and they start thinking they've been left behind. But no one talks about the fact that what looks fast often fades faster. What's built without preparation is fragile. Just because it happened quickly doesn't mean it was built properly. Just because it looks good doesn't mean it will last. That's why delay is a gift. Because what's built slowly is built to stay. And what's delayed isn't denied. It's being custom fit to your destiny. You've got to become okay with being unseen for a season. You've got to get comfortable with not being noticed, not being applauded, not being understood. Because that's where your focus sharpens. That's where your loyalty is tested. Can you keep building when no one believes? Can you stay committed when nothing's moving? Can you trust the silence when your emotions want to panic? If you can, you're being molded into someone who can carry the weight of what's coming. And trust me, if it's taking a long time, that means it's heavy. That means it's valuable. That means it requires a stronger version of you than you've ever been. Delay exposes what you really believe. It's easy to trust the process when things move fast. But the real test is when the process slows to a crawl, and all you've got left is your belief. That's when you find out if your faith is rooted or rented, if your patience is real or performative, if your purpose is anchored or emotional. And once you pass that test, the reward isn't just what you receive, it's who you've become along the way. The delay didn't just change your circumstances, it changed you. It removed what couldn't come with you. It broke habits. It rewired thinking. It destroyed the parts of you that weren't ready for greatness. So if you're in that season right now, where nothing's moving, and everything feels stuck, don't panic. Don't assume you failed. Don't start settling for smaller. Just because you're tired of waiting, something is happening, but you have to stay still long enough to let it form. The delay is a divine filter. It separates the impatient from the prepared, the distracted from the focused, the talkers from the finishers. And if you're willing to stay faithful through the delay, what's coming will not just match your expectation, it will exceed it. Because it won't be given when you want it, it'll be given when you've grown into it. Everyone wants the blessing, the breakthrough, the promotion, the answer to their prayer. But what if the real work isn't about what you're waiting for, but who you're becoming while you wait? What if the most powerful part of your journey isn't the destination at all, but the transformation that happens during the silence, during the struggle, during the hidden seasons no one claps for? People talk about faith like it's a thing you use to get what you want. But real faith is about what happens when you don't get it. Not yet, not now, not on your timeline. Because what you become in the waiting is more important than what you're waiting for. The process is not just a pause before the blessing. It is the preparation that decides whether or not you're capable of carrying it. Most people are obsessed with results. They're focused on arrival, on achievement, on the external. But the truth is, the external can never last if the internal isn't strong. And that's why the waiting room is so important. It's not there to frustrate you. It's there to form you. It's where character is built, where discipline is forged, where clarity is birthed. Waiting breaks the version of you that's addicted to speed and forces you to slow down long enough to build substance. Because the version of you that starts the journey is rarely the version ready to receive the reward. And the gap between the two is where the transformation happens. Nobody claps for internal growth. There's no social media applause for patience. No viral video gets made from sitting quietly with your thoughts and wrestling with your own weakness. But that's where strength is built. That's where integrity is forged. That's where you become the kind of person who doesn't just receive the blessing, but protects it, multiplies it, and respects it. Because if God gave it to you before you were ready, you'd drop it, you'd waste it, you'd turn it into a burden instead of a blessing. That's why He waits. That's why He allows the silence. Because what you're becoming is more valuable than what you're asking for. Think about all the moments in your life where you felt stuck, confused, overlooked. Now think about who you were before that season and who you became after it. Did you gain wisdom, patience, perspective? Did you become more focused, more humble, more disciplined? That didn't happen by accident. That happened because waiting reveals things no success ever could. Success shows you what you've gained. Waiting shows you what you're made of. It pulls back the curtain on your habits, your thoughts, your real priorities. And if you lean into it instead of resisting it, it will transform you in ways that success never could. You don't get to choose the timeline, but you do get to choose your attitude in the meantime. Will you become bitter, or will you become better? Will you waste the wait, or will you work through it? Will you focus so hard on the finish line that you miss the training ground under your feet? Because right now, in the silence, in the stretch, in the space between the prayer and the promise, this is where your future is being shaped. The habits you build, the thoughts you repeat, the people you surround yourself with, those things are building a version of you that either attracts the blessing or repels it. If you're waiting right now, ask yourself, am I growing in this space or just complaining about it? Am I letting the pressure teach me or break me? Am I filling the silence with preparation or panic? Because time doesn't guarantee progress. What you do with the time determines who you become through it. There are people who've been waiting for years and haven't changed at all, because they spent the whole time angry, distracted, blaming, comparing. And then there are people who've waited 6 months and walked out of that season with a completely new mindset, a refined purpose, and a level of peace they never had before. The difference wasn't time, it was intention. And here's the part nobody wants to hear. Sometimes God will leave you in the waiting until you finally get serious about becoming. Not performing, not pretending, becoming. Until you stop chasing validation and start seeking truth. Until you stop asking when and start asking who. Who do I need to become to receive this without losing myself? That question changes everything, because some doors won't open until you do. Some blessings won't be unlocked until you're strong enough to handle what comes with them. That's why it's not about the thing, it's about the person. The most dangerous thing is to get what you prayed for while still being unprepared to handle it. The most powerful thing is to become the person who no longer needs the blessing to prove anything, because you've already been changed. You may think you're waiting on God, but what if He's waiting on you? Waiting for you to shift your focus from the outcome to the internal outcome. Waiting for you to stop begging and start building. Waiting for you to stop stressing and start strengthening. What if the delay is not a punishment but a mirror, showing you what still needs to heal, what still needs to grow, what still needs to be cut off? Because you don't want to drag old habits into a new season. You don't want to carry insecurity into a space that requires confidence. You don't want to bring immaturity into a blessing that requires wisdom. So if you're in the middle of the wait, don't waste it. Don't overlook it. Don't rush through it. Look around. Look within. Ask the hard questions. Embrace the silence. Study the stillness. And most importantly, become the kind of person who doesn't just survive the wait, but rises through it. Because when the door finally opens, when the answer finally arrives, when the thing you prayed for is handed to you, you'll look back at the waiting season and realize it wasn't a delay at all. It was a transformation. And the person who receives the blessing won't be the same person who prayed for it. It will be someone wiser, deeper, stronger, someone who was becoming all along. Everyone keeps asking why their prayers aren't being answered, why their breakthrough hasn't arrived, why doors seem to stay locked, no matter how hard they knock. But maybe the question isn't when will it happen. Maybe the real question is, who am I becoming while I wait for it? Because what if God doesn't give based on emotion, but on elevation? What if He's not responding to how loud you cry, how desperately you want it, or how long you've waited, but to the level you're operating at? That changes everything. That means you can't manipulate your way into blessings. You can't cry your way into destiny. You have to grow your way there, because divine gifts aren't just handed out to anyone. They're released to those who have risen high enough to hold them without breaking under their weight. There's a reason you don't give a child the keys to a car, no matter how much they beg for it. It's not because you don't love them. It's because they're not ready. And if you gave it to them too early, it would destroy them. That's exactly how spiritual elevation works. You don't get the promise just because you want it. You get it when you're ready for the responsibility that comes with it. That means if you're still reacting emotionally to everything, if you're still chasing validation, if your mindset is still stuck in survival mode, you're not operating at the level required to receive what you're asking for. Elevation has nothing to do with your feelings and everything to do with your frequency. If your frequency is low, filled with fear, jealousy, impatience, then even if the blessing is ready, you won't be able to see it, handle it, or hold on to it. That's why some people pray for years and still feel stuck, because they're trying to use emotion to unlock doors that only alignment can open. They think if they cry more, plead more, stress more, that somehow God will fast-track the blessing. But divine wisdom doesn't respond to panic. It responds to preparation. You don't need to beg for what you were built to receive, but the key is becoming built for it. That's the missing piece most people never realize. They chase outcomes instead of inner growth. They want the success, the relationship, the breakthrough, but they're not willing to become the kind of person who can sustain those things. Because receiving is only half the battle. Managing it is where the real work begins. If you want more, you have to become more. You can't carry new levels with old systems. You can't step into a new space with the same insecurities that kept you stuck in the last one. That's why so many people sabotage their own blessings. They get it too soon. They get it without elevation. And instead of rising with it, they collapse under it. Because the blessing was real, but their level was low. When God gives, He gives in proportion to what you can sustain, protect, and multiply. That's not emotional. That's structural. You need the structure in your mindset, your habits, your spirit, to hold what you're praying for. So the question isn't whether God heard you. He did. The question is whether you're on the right level to receive what He has already prepared for you. Sometimes you're not waiting on the blessing. It's waiting on you to rise. It's hovering above the noise, the distractions, the doubts, waiting for you to elevate past the fear and into faith. Waiting for you to stop complaining and start becoming. Waiting for you to stop performing and start transforming. Because blessings don't fall to your level. They rise to meet your growth. Growth doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like isolation, like silence, like being misunderstood, like everything familiar falling apart. But those are the signs of elevation. You can't climb higher without releasing what weighs you down. You can't hear divine instructions when you're surrounded by noise. Sometimes God has to strip your circle, shift your routine, silence the world around you, so you can finally pay attention to the elevation that's required. Because new levels demand new standards, not just in how you work, but in how you think. Not just in how you act publicly, but how you move privately. The elevation is happening inside before it ever shows outside. That's why the waiting season feels heavy. That's why the process feels like pressure. Because you're not just being delayed, you're being lifted. But to go higher, you have to be lighter. Lighter in ego, lighter in fear, lighter in distractions. The climb is steep, and not everything or everyone can go with you. So if you've been feeling stretched, tested, uncomfortable, it's not random. It's a sign that your spirit is being upgraded, that your capacity is being expanded, that something greater is trying to reach you, but it requires a stronger version of you to step forward and receive it. Elevation doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in chaos. It happens in the stretching, the silence, the surrender, and it requires you to let go of the version of yourself that got you this far, because that version can't take you where you're going next. It's not about what you want emotionally. It's about what you're ready for spiritually. So if you feel like things are breaking, maybe they're actually being rearranged. If you feel like doors are closing, maybe they're redirecting you to a higher floor. If you feel like God is quiet, maybe He's waiting for you to level up internally before He hands you something that was never meant for the level you were stuck on. You don't get promoted by pleading. You get promoted by preparation, When your internal world matches the promise, the doors open. When your habits match your hopes, the opportunities appear. When your mind and spirit elevate, the blessing will have to come find you, because you'll finally be ready to receive it, not just emotionally, but energetically, not just temporarily, but sustainably. That's how divine giving works. It's not random, it's not reactive, it's precise, strategic, timed. And when it comes, you'll understand why it took time, why the silence mattered, why the pain was necessary. Because it wasn't about what you wanted. It was about who you had to become to carry what you asked for, without losing yourself in the process. Have you ever noticed how just when you're about to give up, something inside you whispers, "Hold on a little longer," like the universe knows something you don't, like God is watching closely, seeing if you'll walk away right before the miracle? That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. The moment you feel like quitting is often the exact moment the shift is about to begin. But most people never realize this. They quit 2 feet from gold. They walk away at 99%. They misread the pressure as a stop sign, instead of what it really is, a final test. A test to see if they're ready, not just to receive, but to carry what's coming. It's easy to keep going when things are flowing, when the doors are opening and the signs are clear. But what do you do when nothing makes sense? When it feels like you're shouting into the void? When all you've got left is exhaustion and doubt? That's the real test. That's the proving ground. That's the sacred space where destiny is decided. Not when you're comfortable, but when you're crumbling. Not when you're confident, but when you're cracked open and questioning everything. Because right there, in that fragile moment, is where the breakthrough often begins. Not loud and obvious, but quiet, subtle, buried inside your decision to keep going one more day. Most people assume the blessing shows up when you feel strong, but it doesn't. It often arrives when you're broken, tired, humbled, when you've been stripped of all ego and expectation, when you've released control and finally stopped trying to force it. That's when things begin to shift. Not because you earned it through perfection, but because you proved you could persevere through pain. The universe doesn't reward force. It rewards alignment. And when you've endured long enough without losing your faith, that's when alignment is unlocked. That's when doors you couldn't pry open start to swing on their own. Think of it like the tipping point in a storm. You've been battling the wind, the cold, the darkness, and just when you think you can't take another step, that's when the clouds start to break. Not because the storm got easier, but because you grew stronger. You made it through the chaos without giving up on the vision. And sometimes that's all it takes. One more step, one more hour, one more day of faith, when it feels like everything is working against you. That small act of persistence, in your weakest moment, carries a weight far heavier than anything you did in your strongest hour. That's the paradox of the breakthrough. It rarely announces itself ahead of time. It waits in the shadows of your worst moments, testing your ability to stay committed when the reasons to continue are fading. But let's be honest, quitting feels reasonable sometimes, logical, sensible. You're exhausted, you've tried everything, and the results just aren't showing up. That's when doubt creeps in and tells you, maybe it's just not meant to be. But what if that's the final layer being burned off? What if that hopelessness is part of the refining fire? What if you're not being broken, you're being prepared? And what if the only thing standing between you and the life you prayed for is the version of you that wants to quit right now? So many people think resilience is about being tough all the time. But real resilience isn't loud. It's not hype. It's not fire and noise. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's choosing to show up when everything inside you wants to walk away. It's getting out of bed when your soul is heavy. It's speaking life when your mind is full of fear. It's holding the vision with trembling hands. That's the kind of strength that triggers divine timing. That's the kind of spirit that makes blessings unavoidable. Because here's the truth. Breakthrough doesn't happen at your peak. It happens at your breaking point. It shows up in the cracks, in the fatigue, in the final act of faith. That's where destiny begins. When you've got every reason to quit, and you don't. That moment has power, because you're not operating on hype anymore. You're operating on conviction. And conviction is the language of miracles. Conviction is what moves heaven. It says, I will not give up, even if I don't understand, even if I don't see results, even if my heart is tired. That's the signal that says you're ready, not just to receive, but to be transformed by what's coming. And sometimes that one act of not quitting opens doors you never imagined. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't in the outcome, it's in the shift inside you. It's in the mental rewiring that happens when you refuse to bow to fear. It's in the emotional clarity that rises when you stop chasing and start trusting. It's in the surrender, the quiet, the stillness. That's where the divine starts moving. That's where alignment begins to unfold. Not because you forced it, but because you flowed into it. You walked through the fire, and instead of burning out, you ignited a different kind of fire within yourself. So if you're in that place right now, where the pressure feels unbearable, where the silence is screaming, where your mind keeps repeating, just give up, pause, breathe, don't move. You're closer than you think, not to some distant success, but to the internal shift that changes everything. Because what's coming isn't just a reward for your endurance, it's a reflection of who you've become in the waiting. It's not just about what you're going to get, it's about who you are now that you didn't even realize you were becoming. Every second you refuse to quit, you're planting seeds in unseen soil, and at the right moment, in the right way, those seeds will break the surface and reveal what was always growing inside you, even when you couldn't see it, even when you doubted it, even when you were on the edge of walking away. The shift was never delayed. It was waiting for you to become the person who could walk through the fire, not around it. Because once you've been through that kind of fire, you're no longer chasing breakthroughs. You are the breakthrough. Have you ever noticed how just when you're about to give up, something inside you whispers, hold on a little longer, like the universe knows something you don't, like God is watching closely, seeing if you'll walk away right before the miracle. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. The moment you feel like quitting is often the exact moment the shift is about to begin. But most people never realize this. They quit 2 feet from gold. They walk away at 99%. They misread the pressure as a stop sign, instead of what it really is, a final test. A test to see if they're ready, not just to receive, but to carry what's coming. It's easy to keep going when things are flowing, when the doors are opening and the signs are clear. But what do you do when nothing makes sense? When it feels like you're shouting into the void, when all you've got left is exhaustion and doubt? That's the real test. That's the proving ground. That's the sacred space where destiny is decided. Not when you're comfortable, but when you're crumbling. Not when you're confident, but when you're cracked open and questioning everything. Because right there, in that fragile moment, is where the breakthrough often begins. Not loud and obvious, but quiet, subtle, buried inside your decision to keep going one more day. Most people assume the blessing shows up when you feel strong, but it doesn't. It often arrives when you're broken, tired, humbled, when you've been stripped of all ego and expectation, when you've released control and finally stopped trying to force it. That's when things begin to shift. Not because you earned it through perfection, but because you proved you could persevere through pain. The universe doesn't reward force. It rewards alignment. And when you've endured long enough without losing your faith, that's when alignment is unlocked. That's when doors you couldn't pry open start to swing on their own. Think of it like the tipping point in a storm. You've been battling the wind, the cold, the darkness, and just when you think you can't take another step, that's when the clouds start to break. Not because the storm got easier, but because you grew stronger. You made it through the chaos without giving up on the vision. And sometimes that's all it takes. One more step, one more hour, one more day of faith, when it feels like everything is working against you. That small act of persistence, in your weakest moment, carries a weight far heavier than anything you did in your strongest hour. That's the paradox of the breakthrough. It rarely announces itself ahead of time. It waits in the shadows of your worst moments, testing your ability to stay committed when the reasons to continue are fading. But let's be honest, quitting feels reasonable sometimes, logical, sensible. You're exhausted, you've tried everything, and the results just aren't showing up. That's when doubt creeps in and tells you, maybe it's just not meant to be. But what if that's the final layer, being burned off? What if that hopelessness is part of the refining fire? What if you're not being broken, you're being prepared? And what if the only thing standing between you and the life you prayed for is the version of you that wants to quit right now? So many people think resilience is about being tough all the time. But real resilience isn't loud. It's not hype. It's not fire and noise. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's choosing to show up when everything inside you wants to walk away. It's getting out of bed when your soul is heavy. It's speaking life when your mind is full of fear. It's holding the vision with trembling hands. That's the kind of strength that triggers divine timing. That's the kind of spirit that makes blessings unavoidable. Because here's the truth. Breakthrough doesn't happen at your peak. It happens at your breaking point. It shows up in the cracks, in the fatigue, in the final act of faith. That's where destiny begins. When you've got every reason to quit, and you don't. That moment has power, because you're not operating on hype anymore. You're operating on conviction. And conviction is the language of miracles. Conviction is what moves heaven. It says, I will not give up, even if I don't understand, even if I don't see results, even if my heart is tired. That's the signal that says you're ready, not just to receive, but to be transformed by what's coming. And sometimes that one act of not quitting opens doors you never imagined. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't in the outcome. It's in the shift inside you. It's in the mental rewiring that happens when you refuse to bow to fear. It's in the emotional clarity that rises when you stop chasing and start trusting. It's in the surrender, the quiet, the stillness. That's where the divine starts moving. That's where alignment begins to unfold. Not because you forced it, but because you flowed into it. You walked through the fire, and instead of burning out, you ignited a different kind of fire within yourself. So if you're in that place right now, where the pressure feels unbearable, where the silence is screaming, where your mind keeps repeating, just give up, pause, breathe, don't move, you're closer than you think. Not to some distant success, but to the internal shift that changes everything. Because what's coming isn't just a reward for your endurance. It's a reflection of who you've become in the waiting. It's not just about what you're going to get. It's about who you are now that you didn't even realize you were becoming. Every second you refuse to quit, you're planting seeds in unseen soil. And at the right moment, in the right way, those seeds will break the surface and reveal what was always growing inside you. Even when you couldn't see it, even when you doubted it, even when you were on the edge of walking away, the shift was never delayed. It was waiting for you to become the person who could walk through the fire, not around it. Because once you've been through that kind of fire, you're no longer chasing breakthroughs. You are the breakthrough.